What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I want to thank you all for making me a part of your day. Last week's episode was a major hit for our channel, and probably one of my most viewed episodes ever since I started going on YouTube, so I'm very happy. I'm very grateful for all of you who tuned in last week, and I thank you again for making me a part of your day this week. So bear with me again today, guys, because going through a little bit of some personal stuff, but that's really what my whole channel has been based off of. And, I feel like I've given everybody good tips and tricks to help them overcome anything that's thrown their way in their life. And, that's something that's currently happening with me, but I'm handling it. I'm just, I just know how to do it. So feel free to reach out to me if you're struggling with anything right now. I'll try to help you out with that. But NFL season winding down. And the conference championships have finally concluded, and now we have our Super Bowl matchup, which we will talk a little bit about later. But what I really want to get into today is, obviously, we're going to talk about the conference championships, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the NFL as a whole, because I think it's scripted. There is no plausible way, everything that has happened this past weekend, that the NFL is not in some way, shape, or form scripted. The fact that the Chiefs can go into Baltimore and beat a Lamar Jackson MVP type player and them at home, beat the Ravens at home, it baffles me a little bit. So there's a little bit, I'm going to dive into the games from basically a conspiracy theory standpoint and to the legit play that happened on the football field. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'll talk a little bit about the issues that I've seen when it comes to reffing these games. I forget the one ref's name, but we'll talk about that soon enough. But without further ado, thank you again for making me part of your day. And like I said before, keep the subscriptions coming in, keep the likes, comments, and sharing with your friends. It's really helping out the channel, and I'm beyond grateful for all of you, and I appreciate you making me a part of your day again. So let's get into it today. So the Detroit, we're going to start with the Kansas City game. Kansas City, the Chiefs beat the Ravens 17-10. What a shit show this is. It baffles me to this day because Patrick Mahomes is going to his 4th Super Bowl in his 6th NFL season, which from a player's standpoint and a non-scripted standpoint, that's impressive. And I feel like taking the fixation of the NFL out of the picture, I definitely think Mahomes is on his way to being the next Tom Brady. And for most people, we feel like he already is. It speaks for himself in his 6-year career so far. This is going to be his 4th Super Bowl appearance and 6 straight AFC Conference Championship game appearances. I can't imagine a better way to start off your career other than going to 6 straight Super Bowls and winning 6 straight Super Bowls. Honestly, Patrick Mahomes has really revolutionized the quarterback position, and I think he's definitely more talented than Brady. I don't think that's necessarily a question. Brady, right at this moment in time, Brady is still the GOAT. He is still the greatest of all time, and I don't think there's necessarily any arguments that can be made against that. Obviously, there will be those who disagree, but that's neither here nor there. But Patrick Mahomes, again, with this wide receiving core, who led the NFL in drops the entire season, they went into Baltimore and handled business, at least in the first half. The story of this game to me is really about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens choking, and it's really about the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Kansas City scored 17 points in the whole game. All of it came in the first half. The Baltimore defense held them to nothing in the second half. And I'm sorry, I don't understand the game plan for Baltimore. I really don't. Why is it that they went through the entire year bulldozing people? They bulldozed the Lions. They bulldozed the 49ers. They're bulldozing all of these weak NFC teams and AFC teams. They really showed out and proved why they deserve to be the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. And really, basically for the longest period of time, everyone thought they were the best team in the NFL, and it wasn't really a close comparison to anyone. They absolutely laid an egg in this game. And there's a lot that happened in this game. Obviously, This is where I'll talk about the NFL being scripted in a way. The referee who is reffing this game, forget his name, but I'll put his picture up. Apparently, he's a big time homer when it comes to the away teams when he's reffing any game. Usually, I think it's about 50% of the time the flags are going to be thrown on the away home team when he's reffing any of the NFL games. I forget his name. I wish I had it up here. I didn't prepare well enough for that, but I'll put his picture up here. This dude is a classic homer for the Chiefs this past weekend. I don't understand the gist of it when it comes to the NFL putting a product out on the field. I'm sorry, it's not enjoyable. It's not enjoyable to watch whatsoever. When one team is getting the brunt of all the all the penalty flags, I mean, it's just not enjoyable, especially when there's some blatant pass interference calls that the refs missed against the Kansas City Chiefs and their wide receivers. I don't understand it. I really don't. But when we move away from that, we really see that, yet again, Lamar Jackson cannot get over the hump. As much like I talked about with the Bills last week, in last week's episode, I talked about how the Bills couldn't get over the Patrick Mahomes hump. They couldn't get over the Kansas City hump to actually, fulfill their dream of winning the Super Bowl. But that's just a testament of Kansas City lives in Buffalo's head rent-free. I talked about that last week, but I don't understand what Baltimore's issue was. I really don't. Baltimore has been steamrolling teams all year long, and now all of a sudden they can't do dickety shit against a Kansas City Chiefs team that, for all intents and purposes, really shouldn't even be in the Super Bowl conversation this year. I mean, Patrick Mahomes got carried by his defense this year. I think the entire Kansas City team got carried by the defense this year, and I don't think that's really arguable. Patrick Mahomes still had a good season, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, his receivers couldn't catch COVID if they tried. That's how bad their hands were. Now, all of a sudden, Rashid Rice is looking like the second coming of Jerry Rice. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is actually playing like Randy Moss, and obviously Patrick Mahomes is playing like Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce isn't a brittle papier-mâché human being for once. So it all clicked right for the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, they got hot at the right time. Baltimore, it just baffles me to this day that they still completely choked this. This was easily Baltimore's best team since the 2012 Ravens with Super Bowl champion Joe Flacco, Torrey Smith, Jacoby Jones, Ray Lewis, Haloti Ngata, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, all those guys. This was easily the best Baltimore Ravens team since that time, and they completely pissed it away. They did absolutely jack diddly shit with anything they got. No opportunities whatsoever. Lamar Jackson had a 42.9 QBR in this game. 20 of 37, 272 yards, a touchdown and a pick, and a passer rating of 75.5. That's putrid. That's awful from an MVP candidate. And I'm sorry, I don't understand it. Dak Prescott looked better than this, for God's sake. And I don't think Dak Prescott's nearly as good as the quarterback Lamar Jackson is. But if you look at the other side, Patrick Mahomes, 30 of 39 for 241 yards, one touchdown, no picks, QBR of 91.1, and a passer rating of 100.5. So even though I have talked about the Kansas City Chiefs' hands and the wide receivers not being able to catch anything relevant to, a catchable ball, Patrick Mahomes still delivered when it came time. I know they didn't score any points in the second half, but the reality is Patrick Mahomes wheeled and dealed all game long. And obviously Isaiah Pacheco, he only averaged 2.8 yards a carry. I get that. On 24 carries, he only had 68 yards and a touchdown, and his longest run was 12 yards. Isaiah Pacheco runs angry. He runs hard. So obviously he had a fantastic game, but really the story was Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes just doing what they do, playing pitch and catch just like an ordinary day outside. And yet again, Baltimore is being sent home with nothing to show for. I don't understand. I really don't understand it. this was a putrid performance by the Baltimore Ravens, and there's a reason. Hey, Pittsburgh, you can hang your hats on this. We beat the AFC runner-up twice this year. So, and many thought they would be Super Bowl champions this year, but it is what it is. So, obviously, there was a lot that happened in this game, and I talked about the refs and how Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs will get calls when Lamar and the Ravens offense won't get any of those calls. Again, I wish I had the name of the NFL referee, but I'll skip that for now. And like I said, I put his face up a little bit ago and his name. So the reffing was bad, but I will say that this play right here is what defined Baltimore's season. I knew this was going to be the nail in the coffin. I don't care that it finished to be 17-10 as the final score. This play right here is the reason Baltimore lost.
Brothers team on here. 2nd and 8 from the 9. Jackson to Flowers. He dives. The ball came out. It's recovered by Kansas City.
So, Zay Flowers, you're catching the ball willy-nilly all game long. Kansas City can't cover you whatsoever. And if it weren't for an underthrown flea flicker, and if it weren't for an underthrown trick play, Zay Flowers would have scored a touchdown on this exact drive. But, of course, Zay Flowers got called for taunting earlier on in this drive, which that's a BS call. That's such a BS flag to throw in the NFL. Let the guys taunt. Who cares? You overruled them dancing in the end zone after years of that being an issue. You overruled that. What's the hell's the problem with taunting? Like, who cares? Let them play. Who gives a shit? Trash talking has been a part of sports for as long as I can remember, and as long as anyone can remember. Trash talking is a part of sports. Let the guys play. It doesn't matter. Who cares if it's disrespectful? Who gives a shit? Quit being so sensitive. Let the players taunt. But this play, Zay Flowers, obviously, your coaches aren't going to like you taunting players. That's just the case. That's how all coaches are, really, in my opinion. But the fact is that you are going to taunt a player. You're going to taunt a Kansas City Chief DB for not being able to cover you. And then your ass fumbles the ball going into the end zone when you possibly you were taking momentum back. And for all intents and purposes, this was basically the decider of the game. That's pitiful. Zay Flowers, you got to do better, man. That's ridiculous. You talked all that shit on the field, taunting and everything, and getting flagged for it, and still being able to slice and dice your way through the Kansas City defense. And yet, when it matters most, of course, fumble it in the end zone, and then that's that. And then, of course, final drive, obviously picked off by Deion Bush. The only interception thrown by Lamar Jackson in the game, obviously, was the game clincher and the game sealer. So, it's unfortunate. I am over the Patrick Mahomes hype. I really am, especially after this year. It's just been brutal. And I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, and the Swifties aren't really going to like this, but I'm sorry, NFL. What the hell? I am tired of seeing Taylor Swift every other play when I'm trying to watch an NFL football game. I've always liked Patrick Mahomes. I'm starting to dwindle on that. I don't really care for him too much anymore. Maybe that's just because he's so damn good. I mean, I'll probably be retracting that statement in a couple years because now I'm a big fan of Brady because I think he's the GOAT. And I was just pissed at him because he was slicing and dicing Pittsburgh's defense for 20 years. But for right now, I'm not a big fan of Patrick Mahomes. But at the same time, I am so sick and tired of seeing Taylor Swift on every other play. I do not give a shit. And most NFL fans do not give a shit about Taylor Swift. And they don't care to see her on the monitor. They don't care about it. Obviously, this is just the ploy. NFL is doing a great job. It brings in more ratings. All the Swiftie fans are going to be watching the NFL and purchasing merchandise for the NFL. I mean, this was, when it comes to marketing and promotion, yeah, give those NFL guys a raise. They know how to do it right because it just gets eyes in front of the TV. But at the same time, I feel like it's alienating a lot of the football fans who just want to watch football. We're tired of seeing Taylor Swift postered across the NFL. She's not the poster child of the NFL. I'm sorry. I don't care if she is worth $1 billion. Get her off the screen. We're here to watch football. We're not here to watch a Taylor Swift concert. And I don't care about her and Travis Kelce's relationship. For all intents and purposes, that's just a media stunt. Who knows if that could be the case, could not be the case. I could be totally wrong, but at the same time, nobody really cares that for how much the NFL is showing Taylor Swift on the NFL Sunday games and everything when it comes to a Kansas City game. Nobody cares about that. It's annoying, it's awful, and I can't help to think that this is what the NFL really wanted. It's kind of funny. I talked about it last week in my episode where all the past 3 Super Bowl logos were conveniently colored the same way that the 2 NFL teams that made it were. Obviously, the Rams and the Bengals a couple years ago, you had yellow and orange, and then the Eagles and Chiefs, you had red and green. And this year it was purple and red, so everyone automatically assumed it was the Ravens and 49ers. Well, tip of the cap to those NFL scriptwriters. They really called a good audible. And, of course, sending Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But, like I said, I find it hard to believe that the NFL wouldn't want that. They wouldn't want Taylor Swift and the Kansas City Chiefs, yet again, to be on the big stage. And, of course, this is the most watched football event each and every single year, and it's not really close. So, yeah, you'll get a bunch of the Swifties in front of the TV for the Super Bowl and not even caring about the football part. They'll just be caring about looking at Taylor Swift and just praising her. So, it sounds like I'm a hater, which I don't really care too much for Taylor Swift. I really don't. Never have, never will. But that's really the most annoying part about it is the fact that all these people are saying that the NFL is scripted, and guess what? It's becoming very hard not to believe it is. And I believe it was a running back by the name of Benny Cunningham who came out a couple years ago and even mentioned it was scripted. Obviously, there is no hard evidence to prove this, but it just makes coincidence hard to swallow. Like, this is easily the weakest Kansas City Chiefs team that Patrick Mahomes has had in his 6-year career. And this is the team that makes the Super Bowl, going up against a juggernaut Bills team who was playing lights out football for the longest period of time, basically to finish out the last month of the season. And now all of a sudden they can beat the literal juggernaut of the Ravens 17-10 and hold that electric offense to 10 points. See, I don't buy that. I really don't. That's why I think part of the NFL is scripted. Obviously, coaching, the players, that all matters. I get it. But at the same time, it makes coincidence hard to swallow. It really does. So, the Chiefs win 17-10. Baltimore chokes yet again in the playoffs. Sorry, Baltimore fans. As a fellow Pittsburgh Steeler myself, I support you failing and choking. It's okay. One day you'll get back to the Super Bowl, but it sure as hell ain't gonna be. It ain't gonna be this year. So just be like us. Come sit on the couch with us, and we got a nice seat for you. We'll watch the Super Bowl together. So, yet again, the Chiefs on their way back to the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, 4-time AFC champion and 2-time Super Bowl champion, is going to his 4th Super Bowl in his 6-year career so far. So that's it. 17-10 Chiefs, your AFC champion this year, and they're on their way to the Super Bowl. And, I'm not the only one who, talked about it, but at the same time, earlier yesterday on ESPN First Take, Stephen A. Smith, they were asked a question about, what's more of a headline? Is it the fact that Mahomes won and is going to his 4th Super Bowl in 6 years, or is it the fact that the first overall seed Lamar Jackson and Baltimore Ravens lost? Well, Stephen A. talked a little bit about that and Zay Flowers, so I'm going to play that little clip real quick.
I mean, that's a touchdown if Zay Flowers doesn't have to wait for the football. And how did that end up costing you? Because a couple of plays later, you hit Zay Flowers for a touchdown, but he fumbles right before he gets to the goal line. And obviously, that's not on Lamar Jackson. But again, you had him wide open, and he waited all day, every day for the ball to land in his arms because he was wide open and was waiting for the ball, and you were a bit late getting it to him.
Which is true. I mean, I love Lamar Jackson. I think he will take home the MVP just because of what he's done this year. But at the same time, Lamar Jackson, yet again, chokes in the playoffs. The Ravens have become accustomed to this. that's what they do. They choke. They choked against the Titans years ago. They've choked against Pittsburgh plenty times over the past 2 decades. And now they can't beat Patrick Mahomes. So, there's just so much going on, especially, like I said, it makes coincidence hard to swallow when it comes to just everything, the way it has lined up and everything like that. So it is what it is, but like I said, just matters what happens on the field, the play that happens on the field. So, Kansas City moving to their 4th Super Bowl in 6 years with Patrick Mahomes. Okay, so now let's talk about the 49ers and Detroit Lions. And yet again, of course, everybody and their mother was hoping that the Lions would win this game. Everybody. And I'm one of them. My grandfather, God rest his soul, he would be throwing a party in heaven if the Lions went to the Super Bowl, I swear. But I do not understand the play calling from Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. You had this team on the ropes the entire game. The first half, 24-7. Why would you let off of the gas? Let me throw something out at you guys. So the Lions, they had 29 rushing attempts in the entire game. 21 of those were in the first half. Between Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and Jamison Williams, they had 148 rushing yards. What the hell are you doing not running the football just as much or even more in the second half? That's just bad coaching. I don't understand. If it's broke, don't fix it. You don't need to fix that. They were running roughshod on the Niners defense the entire first half. Why in God's green earth you would stop running the ball and just continue to throw the ball with Goff is beyond me. And I think Jared Goff is a great quarterback. I think like I said before, he's the most underrated quarterback in this league. He's the most disrespected quarterback in the entire NFL. It drives me insane that people really talk bad about him still, because it wasn't all Sean McVay when he was with the Rams. Obviously, I think Stafford was a better quarterback, and obviously he won the Super Bowl with the Rams a couple years ago, but Jared Goff just fits Detroit. But Detroit, there is no reason that the 49ers should have came back and actually won this game. And part of me thought, I'm going back to the script of the NFL, the script. Imagine, obviously, you got Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce on the Chiefs. She draws in a big crowd, a massive crowd of Swifties to watch the NFL, and among non-Swifties to watch the NFL. Either way, now, imagine how good it would be. You have Eminem. You have the guy, Detroit native, Eminem, supporting the Lions. Can you imagine those two bringing in crowds for a Detroit and Kansas City Super Bowl? That would have been amazing. But it wasn't to be, unfortunately. NFL script writers, you guys missed out on a great opportunity. You really did. Having Taylor Swift and Eminem, the poster childs of both teams, representing them both in the Super Bowl, that would have been quite something. But back to the game. You had your boot on their throat, Detroit. You had your boot on their throat, and you let them get up. You let them back in this game. There is no reason you go from 21 rushing attempts to 8 rushing attempts in the second half. That makes no sense to me. You were gashing them every single play. Ben Johnson's play call for Detroit, that dude's probably going to leave. He deserves a head coaching job somewhere. He really does. He's one of the most clever offensive minds out there. Easily one of the top priorities for other teams should be to get Ben Johnson in, especially the NFL leaning to offensive coaching and the rules lean offense already. So I think it's so beyond important that Detroit does everything they can to keep Ben Johnson. But here's the problem, Ben. What the hell are you doing not running the ball more than 8 damn times in the second half? They literally could have beat. I feel if they ran the ball as consistently and as much as they did in the first half, Lions probably could have won this game like 45-24 or something. This game should not have been close. The Niners sure as hell shouldn't have came back and won this game. I don't get it. I don't get the play call. I don't understand why on God's green earth, Detroit, you rush for 148 in the first half on 21 attempts with 2 different running backs and your wide receiver running the hell out of the rock to 8 attempts in the second half. That baffles me and makes no sense. That's terrible coaching, and that might be a fireable offense, honestly. So Jared Goff went 25 of 41, 273, a touchdown, no picks, and an 88 passer rating. And then you got Brock Purdy, 20 of 31, 267 yards, a touchdown, an interception, 89 overall rating. I mean, I talked about it before. There's no reason that I don't think Brock Purdy's the guy. I don't think he's special. I don't see the it factor when it comes to Brock Purdy. Somehow, some way, his ass is in the Super Bowl. There's so much crap that just happened in this game. And don't even get me started. One, the play calling, obviously in the second half, not running the ball whatsoever, basically the entire second half. So that's that. But also that tipped failed interception hitting the Detroit Lions defender in the damn face mask and then bouncing right into Brandon Ayuk's hand. That's some bullshit. I've seen some crazy ass plays in my life. I saw the Odell Beckham one-handed catch. I saw Cam Newton not dive for a fumble in the Super Bowl. I saw the throw from Russell Wilson to Jermaine Kearse in the Super Bowl years ago, and then I saw Malcolm Butler pick off Russell Wilson in that same exact Super Bowl a couple plays later. I've seen some crazy-ass plays in my life, but that was probably the most bullshit I've ever seen in my life. Of course, go figure. First of all, it was pass interference on the defense because he pushed Ayuk a little bit back. How do you not make the interception then? How do you not make that catch? Hit you in the fucking face, and then, of course, Brandon Ayuk is right there to catch it. See, that shit just makes no sense to me. But moral of the story, when it comes to the Lions held Christian McCaffrey to 90 yards rushing. 90. The NFL's leading rusher was held under 100 yards. And that's no easy task when it comes to anybody who's gone up against the 49ers this year. They struggled to run the ball. They struggled so much early on in this game. Detroit had them by the balls, and they did not put them away. That stuff, that's really what drives me insane. And I'm going to play the play for you. This is midway through the fourth quarter. This is the play that sealed the Lions' fate. I'm going to play it for you, and then we'll talk about it. This is at 7 minutes, 39 seconds. San Francisco's winning 27-24 right now.
Goff, pressure, in trouble, throws on the run, incomplete.
So let me get this straight. Dan Campbell is obviously, I think he's a good coach. Do I think his play calling is stupid sometimes? Yes. Is he often overly aggressive and probably the most aggressive head coach in the league? Yes. Why are you going for it on fourth down with 7.5 minutes left in the game when you can tie the game right then and there? Because right after this, the 49ers drove down the field and scored a touchdown. Guess what? You're tied at that point. Why wouldn't you take the points at this stage of the game? This is horrible coaching. And listen, I'm a fan of aggressive coaching. I love being aggressive when it comes to the play call on the field. Take your chances, but take necessary chances. This is just unnecessary, and this is beyond arrogant when it comes to head coaching. You have a chance to tie the game in the NFC Championship. This is the first NFC Championship the Detroit Lions have been in since 91. I wasn't even a thought then. And you had every opportunity to possibly send this game to overtime because, remember, you guys got a garbage time touchdown before you had to attempt an onside kick. Well, guess what, idiots? San Francisco drove down right after this fourth down play and scored a touchdown and made it a 10-point game, 2-score game. And then you guys drive down the field, you get your garbage touchdown, you make it a 3-point game, and then you resort to the onside kick. If you kicked a field goal in this situation, odds are Michael Badgley, he's no Justin Tucker, but he's okay. He's serviceable. Definitely could have made that field goal from that range. There is no reason that you shouldn't have sent the field goal kicker out there to at least attempt it. If he missed it, okay, this wouldn't even be an argument. That would just be a bad kick. But at the same time, as a coach, why the hell wouldn't you have faith in your kicker like that? There's no reason to go for it on 4th down at this point. This changes the whole complexion of the game. Rather than being tied and then San Francisco going down and scoring, so it's still a one-possession game. And then on 4th down at the goal line, you guys scored. And that would have been one of the last second touchdowns. And then you guys would have been tied. You'd be going to overtime with a chance to send your team to the Super Bowl. No, you dug your own grave by doing this. I knew for a fact as soon as I saw this play, as soon as I saw it fail, I knew for a fact that San Francisco was going to go down there and score and make it a 10-point game and for all intents and purposes end the game. That's just blatant arrogance. I don't understand the play call. I really don't. It makes no sense to me. That was arrogant, egregious. There's no reason to go for it on 4th down, especially in a situation like that. Most coaches wouldn't do that. I get being aggressive, but at the same time, what do you gain out of it? There's no point in going for it in a situation like that. There really isn't. And yet again, back to the script. I find it funny that we're having a rematch now of Patrick Mahomes going to the Super Bowl again against the Niners, who he beat years ago, which he didn't deserve to beat them because the Niners pissed that game away years ago and had no business losing that Super Bowl, but they did with Jimmy G at quarterback. So the whole deal is right now Brock Purdy might get a new contract because he led his team to the Super Bowl now. Now, if he beats him, obviously San Francisco gets their 6th ring, tied with Pittsburgh and New England for the most of all time by a franchise. And Brock Purdy probably cements himself as the guy when it comes to playing for San Francisco. But at the same time, I think that would kneecap San Francisco. Think about it. Brock Purdy has struggled mightily when situations aren't ideal or aren't perfect. Inclement weather against Green Bay, he struggled mightily. When Deebo Samuel went down, he struggled mightily. And now you're just telling everyone that it's going to be okay. Well, what happens when you can't afford to keep a Brandon Ayuk? What happens when you can't afford to keep a George Kittle, a Christian McCaffrey, a Deebo Samuel? Like, what happens, or any of the good defensive pieces you got, a Nick Bosa? If you give Brock Purdy the bag after this season, especially if he wins the Super Bowl, congratulations, San Francisco. You're not winning another Super Bowl for at least another 20 years, 10 to 20 years. I could bet my money on that. I could bet my life on that you guys wouldn't win a Super Bowl if you gave Brock Purdy the bag. And a lot of 49ers fans would absolutely agree with me, or should agree with me, because it makes no sense to give this man the bag. I don't think he's worth the bag. I'm not saying he's a scrub. Obviously, he got his team to the Super Bowl. You still have to have a quarterback that can, manage the game and get you there. But at the same time, we've seen what happens when the game conditions aren't ideal, when they're not perfect, when it's raining, when it's snowing, when it's windy. And we've seen what happens when injuries take over. Deebo Samuel, for instance. Brock Purdy struggles when the situations aren't ideal. And obviously he had all his weapons in San Francisco, but at the same time, he struggled mightily early on against the Detroit Lions. He struggled early on. There's no doubt about that. And had the Lions not choked, and had the Lions actually stuck with what they were good at, and that's running the football, Brock Purdy barely would have saw the ball in the second half, and there's no chance in hell San Francisco would have came back and won that game. But this is the world we live in now. So now what do you do if you're a Niners fan? Do you give Brock Purdy the bag? Because he got you to a Super Bowl, but so did Jimmy Garoppolo. And you guys were very, very quick to move off of Jimmy G. And I didn't think he was necessarily a bad quarterback whatsoever for the Niners. But you were very eager to move off him. Mainly because of injury history, but at the same time, you guys had a great offensive line that protected him the entire year. So what do you do with Brock Purdy now? Do you give him the bag? Because guess what? In probably a year or two, you can't afford Elijah Mitchell. You can't afford Deebo Samuel. You can't afford George Kittle. You won't be able to afford McCaffrey. You won't be able to afford all these guys, all these offensive pieces that help make him what he is, and the defensive players that are, keeping your teams in games. It's a big-time situation. That's for sure. It's a head-scratcher. What do you do if you're a Niners fan? And as far as the Lions concerned, I feel like they'll be back. This is still a young team. They got great pieces. Obviously, in the offseason, Dan Campbell's going to get in their ass about, the hard work and everything. Sam Laporta is emerging as probably one of the best tight ends in the league, easily. Amon-Ra St. Brown, still the most underrated receiver in the entire NFL. Jahmyr Gibbs, rookie, absolute stud. David Montgomery, a little bit of a veteran, but still a hell of a running back. Jameson Williams, another year under his belt. He's going to be fantastic. And Aiden Hutchinson on the defense. Detroit's got some players, and Detroit's going to be a force in the NFC for a while. Dan Campbell said in his post-game press conference that he told the guys, this may have been our only shot, which is true because there's no guarantees when it comes to the NFL that you can even make it that far again the following year. I mean, we saw the Eagles do that. They brought everybody back except the offensive coordinator, and look what happened to the Philadelphia Eagles. Completely imploded when it came to playing in the playoffs. Everybody was starting 10-0. Everyone thought the Eagles, they're going back to the Super Bowl. No, they got bounced by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. So I feel like the Lions are definitely going to be a force in the NFC for a long time. I feel like they will be back. I think they got the right quarterback, the right coach. Obviously, it depends on Ben Johnson, whether he leaves or stays. And, that's kind of hard to tell, but he's definitely going to get offers to be a head coach somewhere. I mean, if I was other NFL teams, I would be looking into it. But right now, the Detroit Lions, they're young, but they're up and coming still, and they had a hell of a season. They had their best season in the NFL in damn near 30 years. So still tip of the hat to the Lions, but damn it, none of us wanted to see a Patrick Mahomes and Chiefs Super Bowl against the San Francisco 49ers. Nobody wanted this rematch. Everybody and their mother, unless you lived in California or unless you lived in Kansas City, everybody in America and everybody in the world and everyone in the universe was rooting for Baltimore and Detroit. But obviously, you're bringing in huge revenue numbers, bringing in both these teams. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, you can even consider him the GOAT right now. Just what he's doing with the Chiefs is unprecedented. It's pretty crazy, in my opinion, but, that is what it is. And 49ers win 34-31. So our final Super Bowl matchup of the year, we have the San Francisco 49ers against the Kansas City Chiefs. Wow, what a shock. Whoever thought that this would be the case, right? Of course, NFL is scripted in a way. So, of course, this is how they wanted it to play out. As soon as we got wind of what they were doing with the past logos of past couple years, as soon as we saw that, NFL scriptwriters really got to work and made some off-field adjustments, that's for sure. They made some halftime adjustments. So having Kansas City, Pat Mahomes going to his 4th Super Bowl in 6 years, and then you got the young up-and-coming Brock Purdy, who's trying to prove all the haters wrong and prove that he actually is the guy in San Francisco. We're going to see soon enough how that unfolds. And I'll make my final predictions a little bit later. I want to talk a little bit about the college. I want to talk a little bit about college football, mainly the Ohio State Buckeyes. And just real quickly about Ryan Day. This man is coaching for his life right now. They are going all in the transfer portal right now. I feel like this is the most scared Ryan Day has ever been in his life. Obviously, hasn't beaten Michigan yet as a head coach at Ohio State, and that's problematic. I thought he would have been fired after the Missouri loss in the Fiesta Bowl, I believe they played in. Yeah, the Fiesta Bowl. I thought he would have been fired after losing to Missouri. I think it was 14-0 or something like that. Either way. Three names right now that are notable that Ohio State got. Julian Sayin, quarterback from Alabama, transferred to Ohio State. Caleb Downs, easily the best freshman safety in the country and probably one of the best safeties in the country overall, transferred to Ohio State. And you also got Will Howard, the quarterback from Kansas State. So I don't think Julian Sain will play. I think it'll all be on Will Howard's shoulders, which is problematic to me. I feel like you went from Kyle McCord to Kyle McCord 2.0. I don't see the wow factor when it comes to Will Howard at quarterback. Yeah, he did win the Big 12 against TCU one year, but that was really TCU pissing that game away, in my opinion. So I don't know what to say about the Ohio State Buckeyes. They got, they're still going to be in the national conversation. They'll blow teams out like they did last year. And I'm just saying, I think Ryan Day is coaching a little bit scared. He's loading up people from the transfer portal to come to Ohio State, and rightfully so. A lot of teams do that. Hell, my favorite team, Miami, just did that too. We'll talk a little bit about them after this, but I feel like Ryan Day has to be. Here's a couple things. If Ryan Day wants to stay employed as Ohio State's head coach, he has to beat Michigan, and he has to make the college football playoff. At the very least, make it, if not win it. If he loses to Michigan, the only reason I can see Ohio State keeping him on as a head coach after he loses to them is if the team is already in a position to make one of the 12 spots, which more than likely Ohio State will be, and then he has to win the national championship. I think that is the only way Ryan Day ends up keeping his job. If he doesn't beat Michigan, you better pray to God that he wins the national championship with the Buckeyes that year. Because if he loses to Michigan, especially after this year, no Harbaugh, no J.J. McCarthy, losing half the team to the NFL draft because they're absolute studs. Guess what, buddy? You're packing your bags up. You're out of Columbus. That's just the way it is. So we're going to talk a little bit about my favorite team, the Miami Hurricanes. So year one under Mario Cristobal, 5-7. This past year, 7-5. One kneel down from 8-4. But the whole question revolving around the Miami Hurricanes was, who's their quarterback going to be next year? And a lot of Miami fans that I know wanted Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, fired. I do not agree with that statement whatsoever because Shannon Dawson is an air raid type of guy. He wants to throw the football. He wants to. And obviously Mario Cristobal loading up in the running back room. Mario Cristobal, while I have my issues with him, especially when it comes to play clock management and all that, don't even get me started on the Georgia Tech game that spoke for itself, especially not taking, all you had to do was take a damn knee and you were 8-4 that year. But reality is he knows how to coach. He knows how to build a program. He knows how to build a roster and a staff. That's for sure. It speaks for itself. Miami has the number 4 recruiting class in the nation this year, and they definitely land good quality talent in the transfer portal. Listen, Miami fans, you can't be picky about this. Do you really think it's going to take 1 year to make a jump from 5-7 or 6-7 from 1 year and then go undefeated and undefeated national champions the next year in the college football playoff? No. That's not how you build a program. That's not what happens. Look at the similarities between Miami right now and Texas. Texas is where Miami is projected to be going. Texas, first year under Steve Sarkisian, I believe they went 5-7. The next year, they went 8-4. And what happened this year with Quinn Ewers? College football playoff berth. Now, they didn't win because Washington was an absolute juggernaut. But you see what I'm saying. Miami has taken certain steps the same way Texas did. It's only a matter of time before Miami comes back into the spotlight of being competitive. I'm not saying to everyone that they're going to win the national championship, even though I think they will eventually. But especially after landing our quarterback, Cam Ward, in the transfer portal. The stud product from Washington State. Dude knows how to run. Dude knows how to throw. As much as I appreciate what Tyler Van Dyke has done for the U and my favorite team, I'm sorry, man, he's no Cam Ward. Ward just brings an athletic element to the quarterback position that Miami hasn't seen since De'Aaron King a couple years ago, but even then, Cam Ward is a little bit more athletic than De'Aaron King was. a couple years ago, back in 2020 and 2021. So Miami found their guy in the quarterback room. They still got great talent. Jacoby George at wide receiver, Xavier Restrepo coming back for his final season at Miami. A loaded running back room, a great offensive line that's coming back, more than quality tight ends. And then obviously the defense speaks for itself. They still got studs everywhere, even though Cam Kinchens and James Williams are lost to the NFL draft. And Leonard Taylor, obviously NFL draft guy. But, Miami is building. It takes time to build a program back from literal shit. So Miami fans, you got to be patient. And I'm trying to be patient. Obviously, I get into it. I get into the season. I get so heavily invested that my mood sometimes depends. My mood for the week depends on whether Miami wins or loses. See, that's how invested I get. But as a Miami fan, you have to realize there's a process to take. There is a process to getting back to where you want to be. I don't think Miami will ever get back to the point of where Nick Saban had Alabama 6 national championships in 10 years, whatever it was. I don't think Miami can get back to that quite standard because I feel obviously Nick Saban is the greatest college football coach in history. The second coming of Bear Bryant, who was considered the best college football coach in history. So 2 Alabama coaches considered the best in history. Obviously, that speaks for itself. But what Nick Saban did at Alabama, there's no way that's probably going to be replicated anywhere. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're Lincoln Riley at USC. I don't care if you're Mario Cristobal at Miami. I don't care if you're Steve Sarkisian at Texas. I don't care if you're Ryan Day at Ohio State. That success that Alabama had will not be replicated again for another probably 10 to 15 years or 20 years. I don't see that being the case whatsoever, but there's a process to all of this, to programs coming back from nothing. Miami's not going to be what they were in the 80s, dominating the national title reign, 4 separate times in the 80s. I don't see that age of hurricane football coming back, but I do see a possibility for Canes to be competitive in the national championship spotlight and occasionally be able to win one. I definitely think that's the case eventually. With Cam Ward at quarterback, like I said, Texas got their guy, Quinn Ewers, a couple years ago, and look what he did to that Texas offense. I think Cam Ward can have a similar effect when it comes to the Miami team and the Miami offense. So sooner or later, we'll see how that goes. But Ohio State, Ryan Day, I think this is your last year to prove that you deserve to be the head coach there. And Mario Cristobal, got to do better. This is the ACC, for all intents and purposes, is wide open. Jordan Travis no longer at Florida State. A lot of talent from Florida State going to the NFL draft. Clemson, we don't know what the hell is going on with them. Louisville's good, but they're not consistent enough. North Carolina's losing Drake May to the draft, so they were inconsistent too. There's so much unknown in the ACC. So it seems to me that it's pretty wide open and Miami could pounce on this opportunity, especially with the talent they're loading up in the transfer portal and by their number 4 recruiting class in the nation. So soon, time will tell. Later this year, we're going to find out how well that team is and how well the Buckeyes are. So we're going to wrap up today's show with my final Super Bowl prediction. I'm probably not even going to watch the damn Super Bowl, if I'm going to be honest with you, because I'm just so sick of the NFL. I really am. It's unwatchable sometimes. But if we're being honest, I think the Kansas City Chiefs will beat the 49ers yet again, because that's just the norm that's been happening. Mahomes against the world. You realize how big of a frenzy it'll be. Taylor Swift running out onto the field after the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl, holding Travis Kelce in her arms. It's like, that's the poetic ending I feel like the NFL wants. I would love to see the Niners win, but considering one of my bosses is a Niners fan, I'm going to go for the Chiefs. So give me the Chiefs to win 31-27. And that's going to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen, for this week's episode on The Lake Show. Again, I appreciate you making me a part of your day. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. Thank you for making me a part of your day. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror.